Hi, my name is John. I'm a co-founder and technical lead at Zircuit, and I'm here today to talk to you about a bunch of things that I think are getting really interesting and exciting in the world of rollups in the Ethereum ecosystem. And so some of it will be a little bit technical, but a lot of it's just going to be sort of a laundry list of what is up and coming, because this space is sort of blowing up and getting very popular, and there's a lot of jargon and a lot of interesting avenues that I bet you're not really paying attention to if you're only focusing on like one single chain that you're using, or you're only using your one favorite dApp. So I'm going to try to talk about a whole bunch of these things. It's a very hard task in 20 minutes to do, but feel free to ask me questions either in the middle or at the end. I'm happy to take any of them. And really, I just want you to get a good understanding of what's going on in this space for the next couple of months to years. So with all of that in mind, what are rollups and what's their role in this ecosystem? Some of you definitely know what this is. I was talking to a lot of people last night, and they knew. Others sort of were unsure, and they just use main chain, or they don't really know why you would pick different rollups over other ones. So let's talk a little bit about what rollups do and what they should be doing, and how they're supported by the Ethereum ecosystem. So if you're using the chain, you've probably noticed that it's not quite ready for internet scale sort of activity. If you look at Ethereum, probably you've heard the stat before, but I'm going to say it anyways in case you haven't. There's not a lot of transactions per second going on chain. And I think right now the numbers, sort of for the peak or last couple of months, about 14 transactions a second, maybe 15 if you round up. That's not a lot. It's definitely better than where we were at the beginning of Ethereum's adoption. The volume's gone up. There's been apps, there's been reasons to do this, but the actual capacity can't really go too much further than this without changes to the L1. And the Ethereum Foundation and others are definitely working on things to change that, but they have a very special role to play. They have to protect the assets on chain. They have to move not super slow, but not super fast, right? They have to do things carefully, and they have to make sure that changes are well understood before they happen. So getting this number up just on L1 is probably going to happen, but it's probably not going to happen overnight. Instead, what they've done is opted to support teams who can support the users directly by scaling in other ways, namely using things like L2s and rollups. And so, the role of rollups is really to fix this issue, right? We don't want 14 transactions per second. It's definitely not good enough to compete with the internet and sort of all the Web 2 type transactions that we're used to. So we need to do something to Ethereum to help. And since we can't really change Ethereum itself very quickly because there's a lot at risk, we have to introduce something else. And one of these something else is rollups. That's the concept of a rollup. It's sort of a blockchain in a blockchain. This is not a very good technical definition, and I don't want to bore you with sort of technical jargon the whole way through. But essentially, there's a way to take a blockchain off of Ethereum that might look a lot like Ethereum, but doesn't have to, do some stuff off-chain to build blocks, and then occasionally post data onto Ethereum itself. And if you do this carefully and you do this sort of efficiently, you can remove the bottleneck of putting transactions into your rollup network, because you have maybe a centralized sequencer or a centralized operation of this network, where if you just want to go faster, you better buy a better AWS machine or whatever it is that you use, and you make it process faster transactions more and more until you're sort of ready. And then you occasionally post some things onto L1. So Ethereum itself, so you say this is, what happened over the last 5, 10, 20, 200 blocks, whatever you want to do. And you put that on chain so that everyone else in the world sort of agrees that what you've done is legitimate as long as that state root, that summary, is posted on L1 according to some very nice rules. And you've probably heard of things like zero knowledge rollups, which Zircuit is, or optimistic rollups. And these are basically just ways to guard that last state root, that summary that says, okay, we've put something on chain, and now you're going to take it for the sort of well-understood canonical chain that I built off of chain. And by doing that, I get to scale sort of as much as I want. There's probably some limitations, but a lot faster than 14 transactions per second. So things like Optimism, I think, you can go up to somewhere like 800, so it's already huge. And you can also replicate this in many, many copies. So you can take not just one rollup and put it on chain, but a bunch of people can build these systems, and a bunch of people have built the systems. Zircuit, we're obviously building one, but sites like L2Beat track these in the Ethereum ecosystem, and I think there's currently like 100 of these systems or related systems under development. So putting that all together, we get a lot more execution power onto the L1 without actually changing much of the L1's infrastructure. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't change the L1 infrastructure or the L1 can't help us, but the rollups themselves can actually do most of the processing, and we can just rely on L1 for security. And this is a very nice property. So I said L1 should help us. I think they can. I think they are. They will. Vitalik and the Ethereum Foundation have been talking about rollups being a critical part of the L1 roadmap, the Ethereum roadmap, for years. So since 2020, at least, the idea of supporting these types of systems has been critical to the Ethereum Foundation's roadmap for Ethereum. And I think this is great. This means that Ethereum can focus on making Ethereum secure and fast, and people like Circuit and Optimism and ZK Sync and whoever you want can start looking at making it faster and more attractive to users. And they can do this, possibly in their own way, because they don't need the consensus of everyone, say, in this room or everyone, using Ethereum worldwide to come up with their own, with a setup for a new system to use. They can build their own, they can get their own users, they can target different niches, and they can actually, attract users in ways that Ethereum sort of can't. They can switch with the VM, for example. You can support different languages, things like this. So that's really, really cool. And this is not just sort of hypothetical. Ethereum's actually doing this. There has been real support that the Ethereum Foundation has pushed to L1. That has made rollups actually a lot more usable and friendly. So one big highlight over the last year was the adoption of EIP 4844, which introduced a new way to post data from rollups onto the L1 so that they're cheaper. That's not necessarily true if the prices go up these days, but it does certainly allow for it in a lot of cases. And the point is, Ethereum is actually actively supporting systems like this. So understanding the role of these systems and how they can differ, or how you might want them to differ, I think is going to be very important to understanding Ethereum's growth over the next 5, 10 years and beyond. So that's what they are. That's their role. That's the high-level intro. And so now let's talk a little bit about the revolution, the ongoing revolution. What's actually being built? What's actually cooking? What you can do sort of today, and what are the concerns today? And we'll wrap up the talk with a little bit of challenges, because this is by no means a solved problem. One thing that we want to talk about is performance. These systems are meant to scale Ethereum. If they can only do 14 transactions per second, they haven't really done that job. Now, they might do it a little bit if you have multiple copies of these systems or whatever, but you also want them to be fast so that users on those chains can see a lot without having to talk to other chains, different rollups. So there's a bunch of things we can talk about performance. One of them is finality. Posting that state root on chain, for example, is critical to ensuring that you can't just do whatever you want on this chain. And most people think that zero-knowledge proofs are the end game for that, right? What you want is some way of mathematically showing that I didn't cheat, I didn't insert my own transaction into my blockchain, I followed the rules of the game that we've agreed upon. And in order to do that, you need to prove that you did something correctly. There was talks yesterday on performance of provers and combining different proof systems. But the reality is, over the last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it was, they've become really feasible. This is no longer a pipe dream. If we were sitting in this room 7 years ago, it was probably like, oh yeah, that'll be very nice to have, but when? But when? Now it's actually feasible. And proof times are as low as 10, 20 minutes per block, maybe a lot sooner, maybe a lot slower, depending on the system. But that's a lot better than days for an optimistic rollup. And as a result, zero-knowledge proofs are actually becoming feasible, and you'll start seeing zero-knowledge rollups more and more. Also, you have things like blobs. Blobs are reducing the cost. This is not necessarily performance for transaction throughput, but it does mean you can have cheaper solutions for your users. On Ethereum, it might cost tens of dollars to transfer Ether to and from different parties. On rollups, typically we're approaching sub-cent, if not drastically sub-cent, transactions, and that's really good, right? That means you can start thinking about using it day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute, without significantly affecting your bottom line. And I think that's really, really cool. And other teams in rollups are also expanding the number of transactions you can put in a block. So if you want to actually get transactions per second up, what's the easiest way to do that? Well, just make your blocks bigger. Right? Solana's got big blocks, so they have faster blocks. You can do that on your rollup too, without necessarily affecting the L1 itself, and that's really cool. And that means that you can actually target these systems to the specific use case you want to fix. Right? Maybe that's high performance, maybe that's low cost, maybe that's high security. And so, what else is coming in this space? Well, it'd be really nice if we had like ZK VMs that reduce development time. Because as someone who built out one of these systems, building custom zero-knowledge proof systems is very painful. You can do it, but it takes a lot of time. And when Ethereum does upgrade, if you want to mimic Ethereum itself, you have to do a lot of work to fix that. But there are teams working on things like this. Performance is not the only thing you get from this. One thing I said that I think is very nice about the rollup-centric roadmap is that you can be diverse and you can sort of do things without global consensus, in the sense that you don't need to convince everyone in the Ethereum ecosystem that what you want to do is the right way to do something or the interesting way to do something. You can build a rollup for your own specific needs, right? If you want a rollup that has, built-in support for AI, which I'll talk about at the end, you can do that. And you don't need to convince, Ethereum purists that AI belongs on-chain. Because I would bet some of them are like, no, I don't want to do that. That's expensive. Or how do you do that? Or whatever. And so you can build your own unique things. That's really, really cool. Some of the things that are really interesting and good that are coming are things like cross-chain functionality built in. So you'll have rollups that can talk to L1, for example, very quickly, using new opcodes like S1 load. Or you have things that add security to the system. So at Zircuit, what we did was we put an AI in the sequencer. And we look for bad transactions on the chain, and we don't let them on the chain if that happens. And that means, your user funds are a little bit more secure. And doing that on Ethereum, I don't think makes a lot of sense because you want, all the transactions to always go through. But on an L2, you can sort of be a little bit more introspective, and you can start to play around with this, and you can change your design a little. And I think that's really, really interesting. And you can also do different development stacks. I mentioned if you don't like Solidity, you can build a rollup where people build in a different language. Now we're seeing support for, I think, C, Move, Java, I think I heard, Rust. A lot of the different languages are going to be coming to chains built on top of Ethereum, which is great because Solidity is kind of a pain for a lot of people. A lot of people, make errors in it. It's not a good language for a lot of people. So I think that's going to be cool. AI is really popular. One of the unique features that I think will be really, really exciting is to see AI flourish on-chain. Doing that on Ethereum might be very expensive, because if you need a lot of transactions, it's going to cost. If you need to verify a model execution, that might also cost a lot. You can put these things off of Ethereum itself and put it onto a rollup. That makes a lot of sense. You could bake this into your system, just like we did at Circuit for the security, but you could do different things. You could have a sequencer that in principle has an AI building blocks to extract MEV. I don't know if that's going to be effective. I suspect it might not be, prove me wrong. But you could do a whole lot of things, right? And if you want to have an opcode for Solidity that says, generate an on-chain model based on some input, you can do that because your sequencer can now sort of run that call, that prompt in the background for you. And that's really cool. You can't do that on Ethereum without getting everyone to agree to that idea. And it's probably not something you're going to get a lot of people to agree to because it's not the place. So there's a lot of things we can do. Moreover, it simplifies a bunch of UX, right? If you have 12 different chains, 100 different chains, how do you send money from me on Zircuit to you on Base or vice versa or on any other network? You have to find the right bridge path. You have to send the right funds to the right places. You have to make the right approvals. It's a real pain in the ass. Or you're probably looking at 6, 7, 20 clicks, something large, not just send to Bob. You have to do a lot. What would be really nice is if you had tools, AI tools that you say, just what, I have money here. I need money to go somewhere else. Figure out the path and execute the code, and we're good. And that's not necessarily a rollup specific solution, but I think it's something that's still very interesting. So let me conclude with some challenges. I think what I tried to paint a picture of was a lot of stuff that should be done and a lot of stuff that's being done. And I went through very quick, so I'm sure there was some confusion. I can see some glazed eyes, but I think some people got it. It sounds like maybe we're really close to the end, and we're getting close. We've gotten a lot of progress over the last couple of years, right? It's actually become a reality that we have zero-knowledge rollups and people actually using these chains. They're not just proof of concepts or minimal viable sort of hackathon projects. They're actually real. So what's next? Why do we still care about this? Why can't you just go use your favorite rollup now and be done tomorrow and just like abstract away this notion of what a rollup is entirely? Well, there's a lot of things we can do. And I don't have time to talk about all of them. One of them is to continue powering research and development on performance. So 14 transactions per second, doubling or 10xing to 140 or 800 or 1,000 is good, but maybe that's not where we want to be. Maybe we want to go even higher than that, right? That's only like an order of magnitude better, and that's good, but we can do a lot better. If we can do, a ton of different transactions, that's great, but also if you can reduce the prover time to get these transactions on-chain and final, what you can do is have better interoperability between these chains, right? You don't have to wait for hours or days as one rollup determines what transactions are final. You can do this in a sort of atomic, synchronous fashion. This is very challenging. There's a lot of very deep technical things that people like Justin Drake and others at the Ethereum Foundation are working on, but you can also look back at ways for the Layer 1 itself to help you. Hey, one thing you might want to do is say, all of these zero-knowledge proofs are a real pain in the ass. I don't want to do this. And why am I sort of relying on different rules for different levels of security, right? I say my proof system is good, someone else says their proof system is good, or there's an optimistic rollup, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Why can't we just agree on what it means to have a rollup be final? And that's a very contentious topic, but there are ideas to do this. If you're looking at sort of just mimicking Ethereum itself, one idea that's come up over and over again, but more recently, as of a couple days ago on Ethereum Research, is this notion of native rollups. And this is like really cool, because what you can do is you can go back to the L1 and say, look, we scaled our ecosystem quite a bit, right? Help us out a little bit more, we can scale even more. And one way to do that is to introduce this notion of an opcode on the Ethereum virtual machine itself, so on the L1, which executes transactions of rollups directly, which means now you can sort of have everyone on the Ethereum ecosystem validating state transitions for rollups natively. And that's why it's called native, I guess. So basically, the validators are responsible for ensuring that these state transitions are correct. And what this means is if you have an Ethereum virtual machine-based rollup, now you don't need to worry about building out that proof system, because you're just going to submit your state transition as a transaction on the L1, and the validators are going to do that job. And because of the design of this, you can have multiple parallelizations of this, because a validator can parallelize multiple state transitions at the same time, right? It's very actually not super computationally intense to replay multiple blockchains on the same sort of AWS node if you have a sufficiently powerful validator set. Which means if you're getting a ton of these transactions, it's actually not a problem for you, and you can still do this. This sort of does have a little bit of downsides. The early versions mean only Ethereum virtual machine equivalents. In the future, that could change. I think Vitalik's got some notions of this on his post. And that's good and bad. That's good because it's easy for Ethereum EVM-compatible rollups. Bad because diversity, I think, is fun and exciting and going to actually attract more people to the ecosystem. But the point is we can go back to Ethereum with this North Star and say, hey, help us out, and we'll help you out in-chain. Beyond that, AI is very, very trendy, other than just on-chain agents. Maybe you want to do different things with an AI in a way that Ethereum can't help you or won't help you. And so, putting models on-chain, incredibly challenging. You don't have enough gas. They can't fit in the block. It's probably not something you want to do. Might be an optimization nightmare at best or totally infeasible at worst. But places like off-chain, i.e. rollups, can do this for you, right? If you really, really, really value AI and Ethereum's not giving it to you, you can go make your own blockchain that has some support for that, whatever that means. That might just be proving a trustless execution of a model. So you could put your AI into a zero-knowledge proof system. I think that's very challenging. I don't know if anyone's done that successfully just yet. But you could do it. That's a North Star that we're all working towards. And figure out how to verify that on-chain if you don't want to put it directly into sort of an off-chain component that you can't prove. But at the very least, you can add support for this. If you have a rollup that you really care about with AI, you can have opcodes that verify those models very quickly, or generate them on the fly for you as part of the block generation. Right? There are rollups that actually do like Oracle calls. An AI could just be like an Oracle in this situation. And of course, there's other ways you can do this. You can promote AIs to first-class entities on a rollup. You can have different support, right? If you have an AI agent that wants to do stuff, maybe right now it's logistically infeasible or challenging to do it on Ethereum because it doesn't have the data it needs, right? It has to talk to Twitter all the time to figure out the sentiment of what to trade or what to buy or who to talk to or what to read, whatever. That's cool, but Twitter is not, or X is not Ethereum. So it's got to talk to us, it's got to figure out how to do that. And doing that off-chain maybe isn't ideal, right? Maybe you could bake that into your protocol somehow. But there's also other ways you can do it. And I've talked for quite a bit, and I'm out of time, which is perfect, it's my last slide. If you have any questions about any of this, please reach out, and I'm happy to give you the best answer I can. But for now, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, guys? Sorry?
We can give a question or something.
Yeah, but it seems there's no question. I will make a question.
Okay, sure.
Tell me what's the best of optimistic rollup versus ZK rollup?
So why are you asking why optimistic versus ZK?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think ZK is the future, so I I'm going to go with ZK is just going to win long term. Proofs in short periods of time seem to beat challenge periods. But there's someone from Off-Chain Labs, I think, will be talking in 2 hours. Come to their talk, and they'll have a very
You
good
want to
argument.
stay neutral.
So. All right, thank you, though.